Maggie Crawford signed her name without a single tear. 23 years of marriage, and she didn't flinch. Her mother-in-law laughed out loud. Her husband checked his Rolex. His mistress was waiting in the lobby. They handed her $50,000 for 2 decades of devotion and called it generous. Maggie took nothing. She walked out of that mansion with 1 suitcase and the clothes on her back. They thought she was broken. They thought wrong. Because 72 hours later, when her private jet roared over Daniel Whitmore's engagement party, the whole world would learn who Margaret Ellen Crawford really was. If you want to see how a quiet woman from Iowa brought a dynasty to its knees, subscribe now and stay until the very end. Drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far Maggie's story travels. The pen felt heavier than it should. Maggie Crawford sat alone on one side of a conference table built for 20. The leather chair was cold against her back. Across from her sat 3 people who had spent 23 years making her feel small. Daniel Whitmore, her husband, wore a charcoal suit that cost more than her first car. He wouldn't look at her. He was too busy checking his phone, probably texting Ashley, the 29-year-old influencer he'd been sleeping with for the past 18 months. Next to him sat Patricia Whitmore, Daniel's mother. Trish, as she insisted everyone call her, had her lips pressed into a thin line of satisfaction. Her diamonds caught the fluorescent light every time she moved, which was often. She wanted Maggie to see them. She wanted Maggie to know what she was losing. At the head of the table sat Richard Holloway, the family attorney. Rick had handled Whitmore business for 30 years. He'd drawn up Daniel's trust documents, his father's will, and now this, the divorce papers. "Let's keep this simple," Rick said, sliding a thick document across the polished wood. "Mrs. Whitmore, you're agreeing to cite irreconcilable differences. You waive all claims to the family trust, the Greenwich estate, the Manhattan apartment, and any ownership stake in Whitmore Financial Services." Maggie didn't react. Rick continued, his voice carefully neutral. "In exchange, Mr. Whitmore agrees to a one-time settlement of $50,000. The number hung in the air. $50,000. For 23 years. For raising his children while he worked late, which she now knew meant sleeping with his assistant. For hosting his dinner parties, managing his household, and pretending not to notice when he came home smelling like another woman's perfume. $50,000 worked out to about $6 a day. Trish leaned forward, her bracelets clanking against the table. "It's more than fair, Margaret. You came into this marriage with nothing. A girl from Iowa, with a state school degree and the second-hand dress. We gave you everything. The house, the cars, the club memberships. We made you somebody." Maggie looked at her mother-in-law. She'd heard variations of this speech for over 2 decades. "You should be grateful. You don't belong here. You're lucky Daniel even looked at you." "I worked for your company for 3 years before Daniel and I started dating," Maggie said quietly. "I wasn't a charity case." "You were a bookkeeper," Trish snapped. "Anyone with a calculator could do your job." Daniel finally looked up from his phone. "Just sign it, Maggie. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Ashley's waiting downstairs. We have engagement photos at 4. Engagement photos. He was already engaged. The divorce papers weren't even signed, and he was taking engagement photos. Something shifted inside Maggie. It wasn't anger, not exactly. It was something colder. Something that had been sleeping for a very long time. "I have a condition," she said. Trish laughed, a sharp barking sound. "A condition? You're in no position to negotiate, dear. You have no money, no job skills, and no friends who aren't really our friends. What could you possibly demand?" Maggie reached into her purse. It wasn't a designer bag, just a simple leather tote she'd bought at a craft fair in Iowa 15 years ago. She pulled out a fountain pen. It was old, the gold plating worn in spots. It had belonged to her father. "I don't want the 50,000, Maggie said. The room went silent. Rick's pen stopped moving. Daniel looked up from his phone, for real this time. Even Trish seemed momentarily stunned. "Excuse me?" Rick asked. "I don't want the money. Keep it." Maggie's voice was steady, almost pleasant. "I want a clean break. I want my name removed from all Whitmore documentation, including the consulting agreements I signed when I was helping restructure the Asian accounts, and I want the non-disclosure agreement to be mutual." Rick frowned. "Mutual? If I can't talk about the Whitmore family can't talk about me." Daniel rolled his eyes. "Why would we want to talk about you?" Maggie didn't answer. Rick studied her for a moment. Something flickered in his eyes. Something that might have been respect, or might have been suspicion. A mutual NDA is standard, but refusing the settlement... Mrs. Whitmore, you understand what you're giving up. I understand perfectly. Trish couldn't contain her glee. She's trying to play the martyr, Daniel. Let her. It saves us 50,000. Rick, write it up. Daniel shook his head slowly. Maggie, this is stupid. You don't have anywhere to go. You haven't worked in 20 years. You don't have a degree that matters. Just take the money and start over somewhere. 20 years. He thought she'd been doing nothing for 20 years. He didn't know about the online MBA she'd finished 3 years ago. He didn't know about the investment account she'd been building with small amounts skimmed from the household budget. Money he never noticed was missing, because he never looked at the household budget. He didn't know about the family trust her grandfather had established in 1986, the one managed by a law firm in Chicago that sent statements to a P.O. box Daniel didn't know existed. He didn't know anything about her. He never had. I'll be fine, Maggie said. Rick quickly amended the documents. He pushed them across the table with a new pen, a sleek silver thing with the Whitmore Financial logo on the side. Maggie ignored it. She used her father's pen instead. She signed her name carefully. Margaret Ellen Crawford. Not Whitmore. Crawford. Her real name. The name she'd put aside when she walked down the aisle at 22, full of hope and love and the naive belief that Daniel Whitmore saw her for who she really was. She stood up. My bags are already in the car, she said. I won't be returning to the house. Trish couldn't resist one final jab. Make sure you leave the jewelry. Those pieces were Daniel's grandmother's. They don't belong to a farm girl from Iowa. Maggie paused at the door. She turned back, and for just a moment, something dangerous flickered across her face. Then it was gone, replaced by the same mild expression she'd worn for 23 years. Goodbye, Daniel, she said. Good luck with the Tokyo deal. Remember, the Tanaka Group values relationships over profit margins. Don't let Rick's aggressive strategy drive them away. Daniel waved a dismissive hand. I think I know how to run my own company. Maggie nodded once and walked out. The door clicked shut behind her. Trish exhaled dramatically. Finally, I've been waiting 23 years to get that woman out of our family. Now, Daniel, call Ashley. We need to secure the venue for the engagement party. The Vandenbergs are expecting something spectacular. Daniel didn't move. He stared at the door Maggie had just walked through. She refused the money, he said slowly. So, she's proud and stupid. Her loss. No, Daniel frowned. Maggie's not stupid. She never does anything without a reason. Oh, for heaven's sake. Trish stood up, gathering her Hermes bag. She's a Midwestern nobody who got lucky when you married her, and unlucky when you came to your senses. Stop overthinking it. Your new life starts now." Daniel nodded, but the frown didn't leave his face. Something felt wrong, like he'd missed something important. Maggie walked through the lobby of Whitmore Tower and out onto Park Avenue. It was raining, a cold November drizzle that soaked through her wool coat within seconds. She didn't have an umbrella. For a moment, she just stood there. 23 years, an entire adult lifetime, gone in 15 minutes and a signature. She'd loved Daniel once, really loved him. She remembered the way he'd looked at her when they first met, like she was the most fascinating person in the room. She remembered late nights talking about their dreams, his hand warm in hers. She remembered believing that love was enough to overcome any difference in background or wealth or social standing. She'd been so young, so naive. The rain fell harder. Maggie turned and walked north. She didn't hail a cab. She just walked, letting the rain wash away 23 years of holding her tongue, holding her temper, holding herself small so Daniel could feel big. 2 blocks later, she turned a corner. A black SUV was waiting at the curb, engine running. Not a limousine, nothing flashy. Just a solid, practical vehicle with tinted windows and government-grade security features. The rear door opened before she reached it. "Mrs. Crawford." The voice came from inside, deep and calm. "Your flight is ready." Maggie slid into the back seat. The warmth hit her immediately, along with the smell of leather and good coffee. A travel mug was waiting in the cup holder, steam rising from the lid. The driver was a woman in her 50s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed. Grace Chen, Maggie's roommate from Wharton Business School, now a senior partner at Goldman Sachs. "Well," Grace asked, pulling into traffic, "how bad was it?" Maggie reached up and pulled the pins from her hair, letting it fall around her shoulders. "Trish called me a farm girl. Daniel told me I don't have a degree that matters. That's rich, considering he graduated Yale with a gentleman's C, and you finished Wharton summa cum laude." "He doesn't know about Wharton," Grace snorted. "He doesn't know a lot of things. That man walked past a diamond every day for 23 years and thought he was stepping over a rock." She glanced at Maggie in the rearview mirror. "You okay?" Maggie considered the question. Was she okay? She just ended her marriage, given up everything she'd built, and walked away with nothing but the clothes on her back. But for the first time in years, she could breathe. "I'm okay," she said. "I'm better than okay." "Good, because we've got work to do." Grace merged onto the highway heading toward Teterboro Airport. "Your grandfather's trust unlocked the moment you signed those papers. You've got full access now. 38 million, plus whatever the Chicago lawyers have been doing with it for the past 4 decades. "And the other thing?" Grace smiled, a predator's smile. "Already in motion. Tom's been tracking Whitmore Financial's debt structure for months. They've got a $100 million expansion loan through a private equity firm in Boston, and the firm is nervous. Daniel's been making bad decisions, and the board is whispering about a leadership change. So we buy the debt. We buy the debt. Tom's shell company is called Prairie Holdings, very Iowa. The Boston people will never see you coming." Maggie leaned back against the leather seat. Outside the window, Manhattan was disappearing behind them, its towers shrinking in the rain. "He checked his watch," she said quietly. "What?" "While we were signing the papers, while he was ending our marriage. Daniel checked his watch because Ashley was waiting." Maggie's voice was flat, almost conversational. 23 years, Grace. I gave him 23 years, and he couldn't give me 15 minutes of his attention." Grace reached back and squeezed Maggie's hand. Then let's make sure the next 15 minutes of his attention are very, very uncomfortable. Teterboro Airport appeared through the rain, but they didn't head toward the commercial terminals. Grace turned onto a private access road, past a security checkpoint, and onto a tarmac where a sleek white jet was waiting. It wasn't a massive plane, nothing ostentatious. A Cessna Citation Longitude. 8 passengers, enough range to reach anywhere in the country. The tail number was registered to Prairie Holdings, LLC. A man was standing at the bottom of the stairs, holding an umbrella against the rain. Tom Bennett. He was 50, with gray at his temples and smile lines around his eyes. He wore jeans and a canvas jacket, nothing fancy. He looked like exactly what he was, a man who had built something from nothing and didn't need to prove it to anyone. "Maggie Crawford," he said, his voice warm. "You look like you could use a drink and a flight to somewhere far away." Maggie stepped out of the SUV. The rain had slowed to a mist. She walked toward Tom, toward the plane, toward whatever came next. "Hello, Tom," she said. "It's been a long time." 30 years. He offered his hand to help her up the stairs. "I've been waiting." She paused on the bottom step. "For 30 years?" Tom's smile softened. "Some things are worth waiting for." Maggie climbed the stairs and stepped into the plane. The interior was comfortable, but not extravagant. Cream leather seats, a small conference table, a galley with coffee and sandwiches. It looked like a workspace, not a pleasure craft. She sank into a seat by the window. Tom sat across from her, pulling out a tablet. Grace sent over the financial analysis. Daniel's in worse shape than he knows. He's leveraged the company pension fund to cover operating losses, and he's about to walk into a meeting with Japanese investors who are going to eat him alive. The Tanaka Group. "You know about them?" Maggie allowed herself a small smile. "I set up that deal 5 years ago. Daniel took credit for it, but I did all the groundwork. Cultural research, relationship building, everything. He's been coasting on my work ever since." Tom studied her with something like admiration. "You could have left any time. You could have exposed him." "I could have." Maggie looked out the window. The runway stretched ahead, slick with rain. "But I wanted to be sure. I wanted to see if there was anything left worth saving." "And?" He checked his watch, Tom. While he was divorcing me, he checked his watch, because his mistress was waiting. The engines began to hum. The plane started to move. "Where are we going?" Maggie asked. "Denver. I've got a house in the mountains. Private, quiet, good place to plan." Tom leaned forward. "In 72 hours, Daniel Whitmore is hosting an engagement party at the Greenwich Estate. 300 guests, including the governor, and half the boards of directors on the eastern seaboard." Maggie turned from the window. "You want to crash it?" "I want to give you an option." Tom's eyes were steady on hers. "We can buy the debt quietly, wait for Daniel to default, and take the company through legal channels. Nobody has to know you were involved. It's clean, professional, and boring. Or we buy the debt, show up at his engagement party, and let him see exactly who he threw away. It's messy, public, and extremely satisfying." The plane lifted off. Manhattan fell away below them, the towers becoming toys, then smudges, then nothing. Maggie thought about 23 years of being told she wasn't good enough. 23 years of smiling at Trish's insults. 23 years of watching Daniel take credit for her work, her ideas, her labor. 23 years of being quiet. "I want him to know," she said finally. "I want him to look at me when he realizes what he lost. I want Trish to choke on her diamonds. I want Ashley to understand she didn't win anything, because there was nothing worth having. Tom nodded slowly. Then we do it loud. We do it loud. Maggie leaned back in her seat. But not cruel. I don't want to destroy the company, Tom. There are good people there. People who depend on those jobs. I want to take it away from Daniel, but I want to make it better. That's why you're different from him. Tom signaled to the flight attendant for coffee. He would burn it all down just to win. You want to win and build something worth keeping. The clouds parted below them. Sunlight streamed through the windows, warm and golden after the gray of New York. Maggie closed her eyes. For the first time and longer than she could remember, she felt like herself. Not Mrs. Whitmore, not Daniel's quiet wife, not the farm girl from Iowa who should be grateful for every crumb of attention. Margaret Ellen Crawford, Wharton, MBA. Granddaughter of a self-made millionaire. Architect of deals that had kept Whitmore Financial profitable for a decade. The woman they should have been afraid of all along. "Tom," she said without opening her eyes. "Yeah?" "Thank you for waiting." She felt him reach across the aisle and take her hand. "Get some sleep," he said. "When you wake up, we're going to make a plan. And in 3 days, Margaret Crawford is going to show New York society what a farm girl from Iowa can really do." Back at Whitmore Tower, Daniel was trying to work, but nothing was going right. He opened his laptop to access the Tokyo presentation, the pitch deck for the Tanaka meeting next week. Access denied. He typed the password again. Access denied. What the hell? He picked up his desk phone. IT? This is Daniel Whitmore. I'm locked out of the Tokyo Drive. One moment, sir. A pause. Mr. Whitmore, those files don't exist on our servers. That's impossible. I was looking at them yesterday. Sir, according to our logs, those files were hosted on an external cloud server. The access was revoked about 20 minutes ago. The account was registered to M.E. Crawford Consulting. Daniel froze. M.E. Crawford. Margaret Ellen Crawford. Restore it, he snapped. We can't, sir. We never owned that data. It was being mirrored from an outside source. Whoever controlled that source just pulled the plug. Daniel slammed down the phone. It was fine. It was fine. He could recreate the presentation. He remembered most of it. Maggie had just been organizing things, taking notes. The real strategy was in his head, wasn't it? He stared at his blank screen, trying to remember the details of the Tanaka deal. The cultural protocols, the relationship history, the carefully negotiated terms. He couldn't remember any of it, because Maggie had done all of it, and he had never bothered to learn. His phone buzzed. A text from his mother. Ashley is here. Come down for photos. Wear the blue tie. Daniel looked at the empty screen, at the locked files, at the growing realization that he had just signed away something far more valuable than a wife. He grabbed his jacket and headed for the elevator. He'd deal with it later. Right now, he had engagement photos to take. And somewhere over Pennsylvania, climbing toward 30,000 feet, Maggie Crawford smiled in her sleep. The game had just begun. The plane touched down in Denver just after midnight. Maggie hadn't slept as well as she'd hoped. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Daniel checking his watch. She saw Trish's smug smile. She saw 23 years of her life being reduced to a signature and a dismissal. Tom was waiting when she opened her eyes. He had coffee ready, black, the way she'd always taken it. He remembered that from college. 30 years ago, and he still remembered. We've got a problem, he said. Maggie sat up, instantly alert. What kind of problem? Grace just called. Daniel's CFO started asking questions about the Tokyo files. They're trying to reconstruct the data Maggie pulled when she revoked access. They can't. I built that system from scratch. The backups are on servers they don't even know exist. Tom nodded slowly. That's not the problem. The problem is Daniel called the Tanaka group directly, tried to reschedule the meeting. Maggie's stomach dropped. He did what? Called Mr. Tanaka's personal line at 2 a.m, Tokyo time. Woke him up. Started demanding they push the meeting back a week. Oh, God. It gets worse. When Tanaka asked why, Daniel blamed technical difficulties. Said his team had experienced a data breach. Implied it might be corporate espionage. Maggie closed her eyes. He's burning the bridge. He's burning the only bridge that matters. The Tanaka Group released a statement an hour ago. They're withdrawing from negotiations with Whitmore Financial, citing concerns about operational stability and professional conduct. The plane had stopped moving. Outside the windows, the Denver airport was quiet, just runway lights and distant mountains. How much was that deal worth? Tom asked. $40 million annually, plus access to the entire Asian market. Maggie pressed her fingers to her temples. Daniel just destroyed 5 years of relationship building in one phone call. The stock is going to tank when markets open. I know. Tom leaned forward. This changes the timeline, Maggie. If the stock drops before we acquire the debt, the company becomes worthless. We'd be buying a corpse. Maggie's mind was racing. She'd planned for Daniel to fail, but not this fast. Not this spectacularly. She'd wanted to take the company from him, not watch him burn it down. How long do we have? Markets open in 6 hours. News about the Tanaka withdrawal will hit around 7. By 9, the stock will be in free fall. Then we buy the debt now, tonight. Tom raised an eyebrow. The Boston firm won't answer calls at midnight. They will for the right price. Maggie pulled out her phone. Grace, I need you to make a call. Grace's voice was crisp, despite the hour. Already on it. The managing partner at Beacon Capital owes me a favor from the Lehman days. He's willing to talk. Offer them par value plus a 10% premium. Tell them we want the deal closed before sunrise. Maggie, that's $110 million. I know what it is. A pause. Your grandfather's trust has $38 million. Even with Tom's investment, you're short. Maggie looked at Tom. He was already nodding. I'll cover the gap, he said. Prairie Holdings has the liquidity. Tom, that's $70 million. If this goes wrong, it won't. His voice was quiet but certain. I've watched you for 30 years, Maggie. I've seen you turn failing projects into successes. I've seen you build relationships that lasted decades. I've seen you stay loyal to a man who didn't deserve a single day of your devotion. He reached across and took her hand. This isn't a gamble. This is an investment in the smartest person I've ever known. Maggie held his gaze. In his eyes, she saw something she hadn't seen in Daniel's for years. Maybe ever. Belief. Not in what she could do for him, but in who she was. Grace, she said into the phone, make the call. The next 4 hours were chaos. Lawyers were dragged out of bed. Documents were drafted, reviewed, and redrafted. Wire transfers were initiated across 3 different financial institutions. Conference calls were held in hushed, urgent voices. Maggie didn't sleep. She sat at the small table in Tom's mountain house, laptop open, phone pressed to her ear, fighting for every clause, every condition, every percentage point. At 4:47 a.m. Mountain Time, the deal closed. Prairie Holdings now owned 100% of Whitmore Financial's expansion debt. $110 million, callable on demand if any covenant was breached. Grace's voice crackled through the speakerphone. "It's done. You own him, Maggie." Maggie stared at the confirmation email. Her hands were shaking. Not from fear, from something else. Something that felt like power, but burned like rage. What covenants did we get? All of them. Debt-to-equity ratio, minimum liquidity requirements, change of control provisions. And here's the beautiful part. A material adverse change clause. English, Grace. If anything significantly damages the company's financial position or reputation, we can call the entire loan immediately. Full payment within 24 hours. Tom whistled low. The Tanaka withdrawal. Exactly. Grace's smile was audible. Daniel just triggered his own destruction. The moment that news hits the wire, we can invoke the MAC clause. He'll have 24 hours to come up with $110 million in cash. He doesn't have it, Maggie said. He spent the liquid reserves on the Greenwich renovation and Ashley's engagement ring. Then he defaults. And when he defaults, we convert the debt to equity. How much equity? With the stock price where it's going to land? 53%. Controlling interest. Maggie leaned back in her chair. Outside the windows, the first light of dawn was touching the mountains, pink and gold against the snow. "Not yet," she said. Grace paused. "What do you mean, not yet? The clause is triggered. We can file today." "I know." Maggie's voice was calm, almost meditative. "But if we file today, it's just business. Daniel will spin it as a hostile takeover, an attack by anonymous investors. He'll play the victim." So? "So I don't want him to play the victim. I want him to know exactly who took everything from him. I want him to look me in the eye when it happens." Tom understood first. The engagement party. "The engagement party," Maggie nodded. "Saturday night. 300 guests. The governor, the board of directors, everyone who matters in New York society. That's when we file. That's when Daniel learns who really owns his company." Grace was quiet for a long moment. "That's cold, Maggie." "Is it?" Maggie's voice hardened. "He paraded his mistress through our social circle for 18 months. He let his mother humiliate me at every family dinner. He made me feel worthless every single day, and then handed me $50,000 and told me to be grateful." She stood up, walking to the window. "I'm not being cold, Grace. I'm being fair. He destroyed me in private. I'm going to return the favor in public. What do you need from me?" "Keep the filing ready. The moment I give the word on Saturday night, we invoke the MAC clause and serve Daniel with notice. Can you have someone at the party?" "I'll be there myself. The Vandenbergs invited half of Wall Street." "Good. And Grace? I need a dress." Grace laughed, the tension breaking. "Honey, I know a place in Aspen that will make you look like a goddess of war." "What color?" Maggie thought about it. Not black, too predictable. Not white, too bridal. She thought about the sapphires her grandmother had left her, the ones Trish had demanded she surrender. "Blue," she said. "Midnight blue." The markets opened at 9:30 Eastern Time. By 9:47, the news about Tanaka was everywhere. Business journalists were calling it a disaster. Financial analysts were downgrading Whitmore stock. Twitter was exploding with speculation about what had gone wrong. By 10:15, Whitmore Financial had lost 18% of its market value. By noon, it had lost 31%. Maggie watched the numbers on her laptop, feeling nothing. She'd expected to feel triumph. Instead, she felt hollow. Every percentage point of decline represented jobs, pensions, futures. Real people who had nothing to do with Daniel's failures. You're thinking about the employees, Tom said. He'd been watching her all morning. There are 2,000 people who work for Whitmore Financial. Most of them have families, mortgages, kids in college. They didn't do anything wrong. What are you going to do about it? Maggie looked up at him. When I take control, I'm going to protect them. No layoffs, no pension raids. The people who built that company are going to benefit when I run it, not suffer. Tom smiled. That's the difference between you and Daniel. What is? He sees people as resources to exploit. You see them as people to protect. He sat down across from her. That's why you're going to succeed where he failed. Because loyalty flows both ways. Maggie's phone buzzed. A text from a number she didn't recognize. She opened it. It was a photograph. Daniel and Ashley, posing in front of a massive flower arrangement. Engagement photo smiles plastered on their faces. Below it, a message. She's wearing your grandmother's pearls. Maggie stared at the picture. Her grandmother's pearls. The ones Trish had said didn't belong to a farm girl from Iowa. Her hand tightened on the phone. Maggie? Tom's voice was concerned. What is it? She turned the phone to show him. Tom's expression went cold. Who sent this? I don't know. She zoomed in on the image. Ashley was beaming, oblivious, her hand resting on Daniel's chest to show off the enormous diamond ring. And around her neck, like a trophy, were the pearls Margaret Crawford's grandmother had worn on her wedding day in 1952. Those pearls were supposed to go to my daughter, Maggie said quietly. Emma, for her wedding someday. Does Emma know about any of this? Maggie shook her head. She's in London, finishing her master's. I didn't want to worry her until everything was settled. She set the phone down carefully, like it might explode. But she will know. Soon. Tom's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and frowned. It's my contact at Beacon Capital. Hold on. He answered. Bennett here. Maggie watched his face change. Surprise first, then amusement, then something sharper. You're sure? He said. Who's asking? A long pause. Tell them nothing. We'll be in touch. He hung up. What was that? Daniel's lawyer called Beacon Capital this morning. Richard Holloway. He's trying to figure out who bought the debt. Maggie's heart rate spiked. Does he know? Not yet. Beacon told him the buyer was a private investment group that wished to remain anonymous. But Holloway's not stupid. He's going to keep digging. How long before he figures it out? A day, maybe 2. Prairie Holdings is clean, but if someone really looks, they'll find the connection to Grace, and from Grace to you. Maggie stood up, pacing. We need to move faster. If Daniel finds out before Saturday... He'll do what? Attack you legally? With what money? Tom shook his head. He's bleeding cash. The stock is cratering. His investors are panicking. Even if he figures out it's you, he doesn't have the resources to stop what's coming. You don't know Daniel. Maggie's voice was tight. When he's cornered, he's dangerous. He'll lash out at anyone he can reach. Who can he reach? Maggie went cold. Emma, she whispered. Oh, God, Emma. She grabbed her phone and dialed her daughter's number. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Voicemail. Emma, it's Mom. Call me as soon as you get this. It's important. She hung up and immediately dialed again. Voicemail again. She's probably in class, Tom said. It's evening in London. Or Daniel already got to her. Maggie, he's done it before. Her voice was shaking now. Whenever I tried to stand up for myself, he'd turn the kids against me. Tell them I was unstable, emotional, not thinking clearly. Emma and Ryan grew up hearing their father undermine me at every turn. Tom's expression hardened. "Where's Ryan?" "He works for Daniel, junior vice president at the company." Maggie laughed bitterly. Daniel made sure of that. Gave him a title, a corner office, and a salary that keeps him completely dependent. So Ryan's on Daniel's side. Ryan doesn't know there are sides. He thinks his father is a great man and his mother is a disappointment who couldn't live up to the Whitmore name. Her phone buzzed. A text from Emma. "In a meeting. Everything okay?" Maggie's relief was physical. She typed back, "Fine. Just wanted to hear your voice. Call when you can." 3 dots appeared, then, "You sound weird. Did something happen with Dad?" Maggie hesitated. How much could she tell Emma over text? How much should she? She typed, "Change is happening. Nothing bad. We'll talk soon. Love you." A pause, then, "Love you too, Mom. You're scaring me a little." Maggie smiled despite everything. Emma had always been able to read her, even through a text message. "I'm okay," she wrote. "Better than okay. Trust me." The typing dots appeared and disappeared several times. Finally, "Okay, but you're calling me tonight." "Not negotiable. Deal." Maggie set the phone down. Her hands had stopped shaking. "She's okay," she told Tom. "Good. Now let's make sure she stays that way." He pulled up something on his tablet. "The engagement party is in 48 hours. We need to get you to New York, get you dressed, and get you ready to walk into the lion's den." "I'm ready." "Are you?" Tom looked at her steadily. "Because once you step off that plane, there's no going back. Daniel will know. Trish will know. Every person in that room will know that the quiet wife they all underestimated just orchestrated a hostile takeover of one of the oldest financial firms in New York." Maggie thought about it. Really thought about it. She thought about 23 years of silence. 23 years of letting them think she was small, so they could feel big. 23 years of being the invisible woman behind the powerful man. "I've been ready my whole life," she said. "I just didn't know it until now." Tom's smile was slow and warm. "Then let's go to New York." They landed at Teterboro Airport at 11 p.m. on Friday night. A car was waiting on the tarmac, and Grace was leaning against it, her arms crossed and a garment bag draped over one shoulder. "You look like hell," Grace said, by way of greeting. "I love you too. I've got the dress, I've got the jewelry, I've got the documents ready to file the moment you give the word." Grace opened the car door. "What I don't have is a plan for how you're actually getting into this party. The invitation list is locked down tight." Maggie smiled. "Actually, I have an invitation." Grace stared at her. "What?" "When Daniel moved out of the penthouse last month, he forwarded all the mail to his office. But technically, I'm still on the deed until the divorce paperwork clears the county clerk's office. And his party planner sent generic invitations to all the Whitmore properties. You're crashing your ex-husband's engagement party using a clerical error. I prefer to think of it as exploiting a loophole." Grace threw her head back and laughed. "God, I missed you. The real you, not the Stepford wife Daniel turned you into." "She's gone," Maggie said. "She's not coming back." They drove into Manhattan. The city was alive, even at this hour. Lights blazing, people streaming through the streets. Maggie watched it all pass by, like she was seeing it for the first time. In 24 hours, everything would change. "I talked to Emma," she said suddenly. Grace glanced over. "And?" "She knows something's happening. She's worried." "She should be. Her father is about to lose everything." "That's not why she's worried." Maggie's voice was soft. "She's worried about me. She thinks I'm fragile, breakable." "Are you?" Maggie looked at her oldest friend. "I was. For a long time, I was. Daniel didn't just cheat on me, Grace. He convinced me that I was nothing without him. Every day, in the thousand small ways, he made me feel worthless. And now? Now I know the truth. I was never worthless. I was the one holding everything together. The moment I let go, his whole world started falling apart. The car pulled up to a brownstone in the West Village. Not flashy, not obvious. Just a beautiful old building on a quiet street. "You'll stay here tonight," Grace said. "My cousin's place. She's in Europe for the month." Maggie nodded. "Thank you. For everything." "Don't thank me yet." Grace handed her the garment bag. "Thank me after you destroy him." Maggie didn't sleep that night either. She lay in the guest bedroom of a stranger's apartment, staring at the ceiling, running through every possible scenario. What if Daniel figured out it was her? What if security stopped her at the door? What if she walked in and her courage failed her? What if Emma never forgave her? That was the fear that cut deepest. She was about to publicly humiliate her children's father. No matter how justified, no matter how necessary, it would change her relationship with Emma and Ryan forever. She picked up her phone and looked at the photo Ashley had sent. Her grandmother's pearls, draped around the neck of a woman who didn't even know their history. Those pearls had survived the Depression. They'd survived World War II. They'd been worn by women who built families and businesses and legacies with nothing but grit and determination. They didn't belong on Ashley Vandenberg. They belonged on Margaret Ellen Crawford. Maggie set the phone down and closed her eyes. Tomorrow, she would get them back. Tomorrow, she would get everything back. The sun rose over Manhattan, pale and cold, as Maggie Crawford got ready for war. The Whitmore estate in Greenwich sprawled across 40 acres of prime Connecticut real estate. Tonight, it blazed with light. 500 guests milled across the grounds, champagne in hand, laughter ringing hollow in the November air. Maggie sat in the back of a black sedan parked a quarter-mile from the main entrance. She could see the glow of the party through the trees. She could hear the distant thump of the band. Grace was beside her, checking her phone every 30 seconds. "The filing is ready," Grace said. "The moment you give me the signal, I hit send. Daniel gets served with a MAC clause notice, and 24 hours later, Prairie Holdings owns his company." Maggie nodded. Her hands were steady. Her heartbeat was calm. She had expected to feel nervous. Instead, she felt like she was finally waking up from a 23-year sleep. "You look incredible, by the way," Grace added. The dress was midnight blue velvet, cut to perfection. It hugged her body like armor. Around her neck hung a simple pendant, a single sapphire that had belonged to her mother. She'd get her grandmother's pearls back soon enough. "Tom just texted," Grace said. "He's inside. Arrived 20 minutes ago with a group of Denver investors. Nobody suspects anything." "Good." "Maggie," Grace put her phone down and looked at her friend. "Last chance to back out. We can do this quietly. Lawyers, courtrooms, paperwork. Nobody has to see you walk in there." Maggie thought about it. For one long moment, she considered the quiet path, the safe path, the path that wouldn't require her to face 300 people who had spent 23 years looking through her like she was invisible. Then she thought about Daniel, checking his watch. "Drive," she said. The sedan moved forward. Security at the gate was tight. 2 men in dark suits checked invitations against a master list. Maggie handed over her envelope. The guard frowned. "Margaret Whitmore?" "Crawford," she corrected. "The divorce was finalized this week, but as you can see, the invitation was sent to my legal address." The guard looked at his partner. His partner shrugged. "Ma'am, I'm not sure Mr. Whitmore would want." "The invitation is valid," Maggie said. Her voice was pleasant but firm. "Unless you'd like to explain to your employer why you turned away a guest with proper documentation?" The guard hesitated. Maggie could see him calculating the odds. A scene at the gate versus letting one woman through. He made the practical choice. "Welcome to the Whitmore estate, ma'am." The sedan rolled through. Maggie's heart was pounding now, not from fear, from anticipation. 23 years of silence were about to end. The car stopped at the edge of the main gathering. Grace squeezed her hand. "I'll be by the bar," Grace said. "The moment you're ready, just look at me and nod. I'll file immediately." Maggie nodded. She took a breath. She opened the door. The first person to notice her was a woman named Constance Vanderberg, a society columnist who had written 3 separate articles about how lucky Maggie was to have married above her station. Constance's champagne glass froze halfway to her lips. "Is that?" Whispers spread like wildfire. Heads turned. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Maggie walked forward. She didn't hurry. She didn't hesitate. She moved through the crowd like a queen returning to her kingdom. "Margaret?" A man's voice, confused. It was George Patterson, the head of the Whitmore Board of Directors. "I thought you left town." "I did," Maggie said, smiling graciously. "I came back. But the divorce is finalized, which means I'm no longer bound by any agreements about staying away from family functions." She patted his arm. "Lovely to see you, George. We should talk later. I have some ideas about the company's direction that I think you'll find interesting." She kept walking before he could respond. The crowd parted around her. Some people stared openly. Others pretended not to see her while whispering frantically to their companions. Maggie caught fragments of conversation. Thought she was destitute. That dress must have cost. Who is she with? Daniel is going to lose his mind. Good. Let him. She spotted Tom near the champagne fountain. He was talking to a group of men in expensive suits, but his eyes were tracking her across the lawn. He gave her an almost imperceptible nod. She nodded back. Across the party, Grace's phone was out. Ready. Now she just needed to find Daniel. She didn't have to look far. He found her. "What the hell are you doing here?" Daniel's voice cut through the ambient noise. He was striding toward her, his face flushed with anger and alcohol. Behind him, Trish was practically running to keep up, her heels sinking into the grass with every step. Maggie turned to face her ex-husband. He looked terrible. Oh, his suit was expensive, and his hair was perfectly styled. But underneath the polish, he looked like a man who hadn't slept in days. The stock crash had clearly taken its toll. "Hello, Daniel," Maggie said. "Lovely party." "You need to leave. Now." "I have an invitation." "I don't care. This is my engagement party. You're not welcome here." "Actually, it's my engagement party too." Maggie tilted her head. "The caterer, the florist, the band. I booked all of them 3 months ago for our anniversary celebration. You just changed the guest of honor." Daniel's face went purple. "Security is going to do nothing," Maggie said calmly. "Because if you have me dragged out of here, every reporter with a cell phone is going to capture it. Tomorrow's headline won't be about your engagement. It'll be about your ex-wife being thrown out like garbage." Trish pushed forward. "You have some nerve showing up here, after everything we did for you. After we took you in and made you one of us." "You never made me one of you, Trish. You made that very clear, every single day, for 23 years. You ungrateful mother." Daniel grabbed Trish's arm. "Not here." He turned back to Maggie, lowering his voice. "What do you want? Money? I already gave you a settlement." "You gave me $50,000, Daniel. I didn't take it." "Then what? What could you possibly want from me?" Maggie looked at him. Really looked at him. This man she had loved had built a life with, had sacrificed everything for. This man who had made her feel small, so he could feel big. "I want you to know who I am," she said. "I know who you are. You're a nobody from Iowa who got lucky." "No." Maggie's voice was soft but steel hard. "I'm Margaret Ellen Crawford, granddaughter of William Crawford, founder of Crawford Industrial Supply. I have an MBA from Wharton. I restructured your Asian division and built your Tokyo deal from scratch. I saved your company a dozen times while you were playing golf and sleeping with your secretary." Daniel's face went white. "You're lying." "Am I?" Maggie pulled out her phone and showed him a document. It was a Wharton transcript. Her name, her grades, summa cum laude. "This is impossible. You couldn't." "I could. I did. And I hid it from you because I wanted you to love me for who I was, not for what I could give you." Her voice cracked just slightly. "But you never loved me at all, did you, Daniel? You loved what I did for you. And the moment you thought you didn't need me anymore, you threw me away." The party had gone quiet around them. Hundreds of eyes were watching. Hundreds of phones were recording. Daniel was breathing hard. "This doesn't change anything. I still own the company. I still have the board. You're still nobody." "Actually," said a voice from behind Maggie, "that's not quite accurate." Tom Bennett stepped forward. He had a folder in his hand. "Who the hell are you?" Daniel demanded. "Thomas Bennett, Prairie Holdings." Tom opened the folder. "As of 48 hours ago, my company—" "But then you checked your watch, Daniel. While you were ending our marriage, you checked your watch because your mistress was waiting." She took a step closer. "That's when I decided you didn't deserve a quiet exit. I'll fight this. Your lawyers work for the company. And in 24 hours, I own the company. The board has been looking for a reason to replace you for 2 years. George Patterson called me this morning. They're ready to vote." Daniel was shaking now, his whole body trembling with rage and fear and the dawning realization that everything he had built was crumbling around him. "You can't do this to me," he said. "I'm Daniel Whitmore. You're finished," Maggie said simply. "You're finished, and everyone here knows it." She turned to walk away. "Maggie, wait!" The voice came from the edge of the crowd. A young man was pushing through, his face pale with shock. Ryan, her son. Maggie's heart clenched. "Mom?" Ryan's voice cracked. "What's going on? What is this?" "Ryan, is it true, what she's saying?" Ryan turned to his father. "Dad?" Daniel said nothing. He was still staring at the document in his hands, like he could make it disappear through sheer will. "Dad!" Ryan's voice rose. "Answer me!" "It's complicated," Daniel mumbled. "Complicated?" Ryan laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Mom just said she has an MBA from Wharton, that she built the Tokyo deal, that you—" He stopped, his voice breaking. "Is any of that true?" Daniel finally looked up, at his son, at the crowd watching, at the ruins of his reputation. "She's exaggerating," he said weakly. "She helped with some things. But you took credit for her work." Ryan's voice was flat. "For 23 years, you took credit for Mom's work." "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like, Dad? Tell me. Tell everyone." Ryan gestured at the silent crowd. "Because I just found out my mother is some kind of secret financial genius, and my father is a—" "Ryan." Maggie stepped forward and took her son's hands. "Not here. Not like this." "Mom, His eyes were wet. "Why didn't you tell me?" Because I didn't want you to have to choose sides. Because I thought maybe if I was patient, if I was quiet, your father would eventually see my value. But he never did. No. Maggie's voice was soft. He never did. Ryan turned back to his father. His face had hardened. I quit, he said. Daniel blinked. What? I quit. Effective immediately. I'm not working for you anymore. Ryan, don't be ridiculous. You can't just watch me. Ryan pulled off his Whitmore Company ID and threw it at his father's feet. I spent 5 years in that corner office, doing nothing real, contributing nothing real, because you wanted to keep me dependent on you. What can I do? Maggie stared at her son. This boy she had raised, who she'd watched become a man, who she'd feared was lost to his father's influence forever. Come to the board meeting Monday morning, she said. I'm going to need people I can trust. Ryan nodded. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry I didn't see it before. You see it now. That's what matters. A commotion near the house made everyone turn. Ashley Vandenberg was running across the lawn, her pink dress trailing behind her. Her face was streaked with tears and mascara. Daniel! She screamed. Daniel, what's happening? My father just called. He said the stock is crashing. He said we're ruined. She stopped in front of him, clutching his arm. Tell me it's not true. Tell me we're not broke. Daniel couldn't answer. Ashley's eyes darted around the crowd. They landed on Maggie. They took in the midnight blue dress, the sapphire pendant, the calm confidence. You, Ashley breathed. You're the wife, the ex-wife. That's right. But they said you were nothing, a secretary or something. They were wrong. Ashley's face contorted. This is your fault. You did this to us. No. Maggie's voice was patient, almost kind. Daniel did this to himself. I just helped him get there faster. Ashley turned to Daniel, her hands balling into fists. You told me she was nobody. You told me your marriage was dead for years. You told me... She stopped, realization dawning. You lied. About everything. Ashley, please, I'm not marrying a liar. Ashley yanked the engagement ring off her finger, the same ring that had cost the company its liquid reserves. She threw it at Daniel's chest. My father was right about you. She stormed off toward the parking area, already pulling out her phone. Daniel stood alone in the center of the lawn. His fiancée was gone. His son had abandoned him. His company was slipping through his fingers, and 300 witnesses were capturing every moment on their phones. Trish tried to rally. This isn't over, she announced to no one in particular. We'll fight this in court. We'll... Mother. Daniel's voice was hollow. Stop. He looked at Maggie. For the first time in 23 years, he really looked at her. How long? He asked. How long were you planning this? I wasn't planning anything, Daniel. I was just waiting. Waiting for you to show me who you really were. Maggie's eyes were steady on his. And in that conference room, when you checked your watch while divorcing me, you finally did. I loved you once, he said. It sounded like a plea. No, Maggie shook her head. You loved what I could do for you. You loved the way I made your life easier. But you never loved me, Daniel. If you had, you would have noticed who I was. She turned to walk away. Maggie. She stopped. What happens now? She looked back at him over her shoulder. This man who had been her husband, her life, her whole world for 23 years. This man who had made her feel worthless. Now I take back everything you stole from me, she said, and I build something better. She walked away. Tom fell into step beside her. So did Ryan. So did Grace. Behind them, Daniel Whitmore stood alone in the ruins of his engagement party, holding a legal document that spelled the end of everything he thought he was. The whispers started before they reached the car. By midnight, videos were everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. The hashtag Whitmore collapse was trending nationally. Someone had caught Ryan throwing his ID badge. Someone else had captured Ashley's ring hitting Daniel's chest. But the clip everyone was sharing, the one with 10 million views before morning, showed Maggie Crawford walking away from her ex-husband. Her head was high. Her shoulders were back. Her midnight blue dress caught the light like armor. The caption read, "Never underestimate the quiet ones." In the car, Maggie leaned her head against the window. Her hands were shaking now. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind exhaustion and something else. Something that felt like freedom. Tom took her hand. "You did it," he said. "We did it." Grace was already on her phone. "The filing went through. Daniel has 24 hours to respond. The board just sent an emergency email, meeting at 9 a.m. Monday." "I need to call Emma," Maggie said. "Actually," Grace hesitated, "she already called me 20 minutes ago." Maggie sat up. "What did she say?" "She saw the videos. She's catching the first flight from London." Grace smiled. "She said to tell you she's proud of you." Maggie's eyes filled with tears. She didn't try to stop them. Ryan, sitting across from her, reached out and took her other hand. "Mom," he said, "I need to tell you something." "What is it?" "I've known for 2 years." Maggie blinked. "Known what?" "About Dad. About Ashley. About everything." Ryan's jaw tightened. "I saw them together at a company retreat. I confronted Dad about it. He told me if I said anything to you, he'd cut me out of the will and destroy my career." "Ryan, I should have told you. I should have been braver. Instead, I just—" His voice broke. "I watched him treat you like dirt, and I didn't do anything." Maggie pulled her son into a hug. "You were scared," she said. "He made you scared. That's not your fault." "I'm not scared anymore." "I know." She held him tighter. "I know." The car drove through the night, leaving Greenwich behind. Behind them, a dynasty was falling. Ahead of them, something new was rising. Maggie Crawford closed her eyes and let herself breathe. For the first time in 23 years, she knew exactly who she was. The boardroom on the 42nd floor of Whitmore Tower had never seen a Monday morning like this. Maggie arrived at 8:30, a full 30 minutes before the emergency meeting was scheduled to begin. She wanted to be the first one there. She wanted to sit at the head of that table and watch everyone else walk in. Tom was beside her. So was Grace. And Ryan, looking pale but determined, his jaw set in a way that reminded Maggie of her father. "You ready for this?" Grace asked. "I've been ready for 23 years. The elevator doors opened. Maggie stepped out. The receptionist looked up, and her face went through 3 expressions in rapid succession: confusion, recognition, fear. "Mrs. Miss Crawford, we weren't expecting—" "I'm here for the board meeting," Maggie said pleasantly. "The conference room, please." "Of course, it's down the hall. But Mr. Whitmore isn't here yet, and I'm not sure if—" "Mr. Whitmore doesn't run this company anymore." Maggie kept walking. "I do." She pushed open the heavy oak doors of the boardroom. Empty. Good. She walked to the head of the table, pulled out the chair that Daniel had sat in for 15 years, and sat down. The leather was still warm. Grace took a position by the door. Tom sat at Maggie's right hand. Ryan chose a seat halfway down the table, close enough to support his mother, but far enough to show he wasn't riding her coattails. They waited. At 8:47, the first board member arrived. George Patterson stopped in the doorway, his coffee frozen halfway to his lips. "Margaret?" "Good morning, George. Please, have a seat." "You're in Daniel's chair." "I'm in my chair now." George stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his face. "I'll be damned," he said. "You actually did it." "Did what?" "Beat him at his own game." George sat down across from Ryan. "I've been on this board for 12 years, Margaret. I've watched Daniel run this company into the ground. I've watched him ignore good advice, alienate good partners, and take credit for work he didn't do." He leaned back. "I always wondered where the good ideas were coming from. Now I know." More board members filtered in over the next 10 minutes. Each one had the same reaction: surprise, confusion, and then, in most cases, something that looked like relief. By 8:58, the room was full. 8 board members plus Maggie's team. Only one chair remained empty. Daniel's. "Should we wait for him?" someone asked. "Give him until 9, Maggie said. "Then we start without him." At 8:59, the door burst open. Daniel Whitmore looked like he hadn't slept in 3 days. His suit was wrinkled. His tie was crooked. His eyes were wild. "This meeting is invalid," he announced, pointing at Maggie. "She has no authority to call a board meeting. She's not even a shareholder." "Actually," Grace said, sliding a document across the table, "as of 6 a.m. this morning, Prairie Holdings completed the debt-to-equity conversion. Miss Crawford now controls 53% of voting shares." Daniel grabbed the document. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely read it. "This is fraud. This is completely legal," Tom said. "Your own lawyers reviewed the original loan agreement. The MAC clause was airtight. You triggered it yourself when you destroyed the Tanaka deal." "The Tanaka deal was sabotaged." "The Tanaka deal was sabotaged by you, Daniel." Maggie's voice was calm. "When you called Mr. Tanaka at 2 in the morning and demanded he reschedule. When you blamed a data breach that never happened. When you tried to cover up the fact that you had no idea how that deal actually worked, because you never bothered to learn." Daniel's face was purple. "You deleted the files." "I revoked access to files I created. Files I maintained on my own servers, using my own systems. Files you never had any legal right to in the first place." "The board won't support this." Daniel turned to the other members. "George, Patricia, we've worked together for years. You can't let her just walk in here and—" "Sit down, Daniel." George's voice was tired. "Just sit down." "George, the stock dropped 41% last week. We've lost the Tanaka contract. The Dubai investors pulled out this morning, and I've got 3 major clients threatening to move their accounts." George rubbed his eyes. "We're dying, Daniel, and you're the one holding the knife." Daniel stood frozen in the doorway. "Sit down," George repeated. "Or don't. Either way, we're taking a vote." Slowly, like a man walking to his own execution, Daniel moved to the only empty chair. He sat. Maggie looked around the table. "I'm not here to destroy this company," she said. "I'm here to save it." For the past 5 years, Whitmore Financial has been hemorrhaging talent, losing clients, and making decisions based on ego rather than strategy. She paused. "I know, because I watched it happen. I tried to fix it from the shadows. I tried to guide Daniel in the right direction. But he wouldn't listen. Because I didn't know you were trying to guide me," Daniel exploded. "You pretended to be a housewife. You lied about everything." "I didn't lie. I just didn't volunteer information you never bothered to ask about." Maggie's eyes met his. "In 23 years, Daniel, Did you ever once ask me about my education? My career before we met? My family history? Did you ever show the slightest curiosity about who I was beyond being your wife?" Daniel opened his mouth, closed it. "No," Maggie answered for him. "You didn't, because you didn't care. I was convenient. I was useful. And when I stopped being useful, you threw me away." The room was silent. "This isn't about revenge," Maggie continued. "If it were about revenge, I would have let the company collapse. I would have watched you lose everything and walked away. But there are 2,000 people who work here, 2,000 families who depend on Whitmore financial paychecks. They didn't do anything wrong. They don't deserve to suffer because of your mistakes." She stood up. "So here's what's going to happen. We're going to vote on a change of leadership. Daniel Whitmore will step down as CEO effective immediately. I will assume the position on an interim basis while we stabilize operations and rebuild client confidence." "And if I refuse?" Daniel asked. "Then I'll call your personal loans." Maggie's voice was ice. "All of them. The yacht, the Hampton house, the apartment in Monaco. You're leveraged to the hilt, Daniel. If I squeeze, you lose everything. Not the company. You. Personally." Daniel went pale. "But I don't want to do that," Maggie said, her voice softening slightly. "I don't want to destroy you. I just want you out of my way." "What are you offering?" Maggie nodded to Grace, who slid another document across the table. "You still own 12% of the B shares. Non-voting, but they exist. I'm offering to buy them out at fair market value. $22 million. Daniel looked at the number. His eyes widened. "That's more than you deserve? Yes. But it's enough to pay off your debts, keep the penthouse, and start over somewhere else." Maggie sat back down. "Take the money, Daniel. Walk away with some dignity. It's more than you gave me." The silence stretched. Daniel looked around the table. At the board members who wouldn't meet his eyes. At his son, sitting halfway down, who stared at him with an expression of cold disappointment. At Tom Bennett, the man who had helped his wife dismantle his empire. "If I don't take it, then we vote anyway. You lose your position. You lose your shares through dilution. And you spend the next 5 years in court, fighting battles you can't afford." Maggie shrugged. "Your choice." Daniel's hands were trembling. His jaw worked silently. And then something broke. All the fight went out of him. His shoulders slumped. His head dropped. "Fine," he whispered. "I'll sign." Grace had the paperwork ready. Daniel signed without reading it. His signature was barely legible, a shaky scrawl that looked nothing like the confident strokes he'd used on their divorce papers. "The board will still need to vote," George said. "For the record, all in favor of removing Daniel Whitmore as CEO and appointing Margaret Crawford as interim CEO?" Grace asked. 7 hands went up. The only abstention was Daniel himself. "Motion carries." Grace collected the signed documents. "Mr. Whitmore, you have 48 hours to clear your personal belongings from the premises." Daniel stood up slowly. He looked at Maggie one last time. "I hope it was worth it," he said. "It wasn't about worth, Daniel." Maggie's voice was almost gentle. "It was about truth. And the truth is, you never deserved me." Daniel walked out. The door closed behind him. The room exhaled. "Well," George said, breaking the tension, "that was the most dramatic Monday morning I've ever had." And Grace, standing by the door, gave her a subtle thumbs up. The meeting lasted 4 hours. When it finally broke for lunch, Maggie stayed behind. She stood at the window, looking out at the city she'd spent 23 years feeling like she didn't belong in. Quite a view. She turned. Tom was still there, waiting. I used to stand at this window while Daniel was in meetings, she said. I'd bring him coffee, and he'd wave me away, and I'd stand here looking at the city, wondering what it would be like to actually matter. You always mattered, Maggie. He just couldn't see it. I couldn't see it either. That's the thing. She turned to face him. I believed what they told me. For 23 years, I believed I was lucky to be here. Lucky to be tolerated. Lucky to have a seat at someone else's table. And now? Now I own the table. She laughed, a little incredulously. I actually own the table, Tom. You earned it. I took it. Same thing. He stepped closer. You took what was yours, what you built, what they stole from you, one condescending comment at a time. Maggie's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen. It was a text from an unknown number. An image. She opened it and went still. It was a photo of Emma at Heathrow Airport. She was walking toward the departures gate, a carry-on bag over her shoulder. Behind her, barely visible at the edge of the frame, was a man in a dark suit. Below the photo, a message. She lands at JFK in 7 hours. Make sure she arrives safely. Maggie's blood ran cold. What is it? Tom asked. She showed him the phone. His expression darkened. Who sent this? I don't know. Her fingers were shaking as she dialed Emma's number. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Mom? Emma, where are you? I'm at the gate. Flight's boarding in 20 minutes. Why? What's wrong? Nothing. Nothing's wrong. Just... Maggie took a breath. Is there anyone near you? Anyone who looks out of place? A pause. Mom, you're scaring me. Just answer the question, Emma. There's a guy in a suit. He's been kind of hanging around. I thought he was just waiting for his flight. What does he look like? I don't know. Tall, dark hair, kind of generic. Another pause. Mom, what's going on? Listen to me carefully. I want you to go to the British Airways customer service desk. Tell them you need to speak to airport security. Tell them you're being followed. Mom, do it now, Emma, please. Silence. Then, Okay, I'm walking there now. Maggie heard her daughter's footsteps, the ambient noise of the airport, the distant announcements. I'm at the desk, Emma said. There's a woman here. She looks official. Tell her exactly what I told you. Muffled conversation. Then Emma's voice again, tighter now. Mom, the guy in the suit. He's gone. He was right there a second ago, and now he's just... gone. Maggie closed her eyes. It's okay, she said. Stay with security. Don't board that flight. I'm sending someone to get you. Mom, what is happening? I'll explain everything when you're safe, I promise. She hung up and immediately dialed Grace. I need a private jet to London, now. What? Why? Someone just threatened Emma. Someone who knows where she is and what flight she's on. Grace swore under her breath. I'm on it. I can have a plane at Heathrow in 4 hours. Make it 3. Tom was already on his own phone, speaking rapidly. I have contacts at Scotland Yard, he said. Former security clients. They can have someone at the airport in 30 minutes. Maggie nodded, her mind racing. Who had sent that photo? Trish? She was vindictive enough, but organized enough? Daniel? He was broken, desperate, but threatening a child? Or was it someone else entirely? Someone she hadn't considered? Her phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown number. This one wasn't a photo. It was a name. Richard Holloway. Maggie stared at the screen. Rick Holloway, the family lawyer, the man who had drawn up her divorce papers, the man who had switched sides when he realized she was winning. She called Grace back. "Where's Richard Holloway right now?" "Holloway? He's been working on the ownership transfer documents. Why?" Maggie's voice was soft but deadly. "I've spent 23 years reading people who thought they were smarter than me. You're not that smart, Rick. Tell me what you know." Rick swallowed hard. His eyes darted to Tom, to Grace, then back to Maggie. "It wasn't supposed to go this far," he said finally. "What wasn't?" "Trish." He wiped his forehead with a shaking hand. "She called me Saturday night, after the party. She was hysterical. She wanted me to find something, anything, that could stop you from taking the company." "And?" "I told her there was nothing. The acquisition was clean. The contracts were airtight. You'd covered every angle." Rick loosened his tie. "She didn't take it well." "What did she do?" "She said if she couldn't stop you legally, she'd stop you another way." He looked at the table. "She has connections. People from her first husband's business. People who don't operate through lawyers." Maggie felt ice spreading through her chest. "She hired someone to threaten my daughter?" "I don't know who she hired. I don't know how. She told me to keep you distracted, to make sure you were focused on the company, not on your family." "And you agreed?" "She threatened me too." Rick's voice cracked. "She knows things about my past, things that could destroy my career. I didn't have a choice." "Everyone has a choice." Maggie leaned forward. "Where is Trish now?" "I don't know. She has a sister in Tuscany. She might have gone there." "Find her." Maggie stood up. "Find her and bring her to me, or I will make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of lawyer Richard Holloway really is." Rick practically ran from the room. Tom was on the phone again. "My Scotland Yard contact just arrived at Heathrow. Emma's with airport security. She's safe." Maggie exhaled. Her hands were still shaking. "This isn't over," she said quietly. "No, it isn't." Tom came to stand beside her. "But we know who we're dealing with now, and Trish is operating from panic, not strategy. She's going to make mistakes. She already made one." Maggie's jaw tightened. "She threatened my daughter. What are you going to do?" Maggie looked at him, and for the first time, Tom saw something in her eyes that wasn't just determination. It was something older, darker. Something that had survived 23 years of abuse and emerged forged in fire. "I'm going to end this," she said. "Completely. Permanently. Whatever it takes." Her phone buzzed. A text from Emma. "I'm okay. I'm scared, but I'm okay." "Who's doing this, Mom?" Maggie typed back. "Someone who made a very big mistake. I'm coming to get you. I love you." She looked up at Tom. "Book the jet. We're going to London." "And Trish?" "She'll wait." Maggie grabbed her bag. "My daughter comes first. She always has. She always will." They walked out of the boardroom together. Behind them, the city spread out in all its glittering indifference. But somewhere out there, Patricia Whitmore was about to learn a very important lesson. You don't threaten Margaret Crawford's children, not unless you're ready to lose everything. The jet touched down at Heathrow just after midnight, London time. Maggie hadn't slept the entire flight. She'd spent 7 hours on the phone, coordinating with Tom's security contacts, speaking with Emma every 30 minutes, and tracking every piece of information she could find about Trish's movements. The woman had vanished. Her credit cards showed no activity. Her phone was off. Her sister in Tuscany claimed she hadn't heard from her in weeks. But Maggie knew Trish was still pulling strings. Somewhere. Somehow. The jet doors opened. Maggie was down the stairs before they'd fully extended. Emma was waiting in the private terminal, flanked by two men in dark suits. Tom's Scotland Yard contacts. She looked exhausted, terrified, and older than her 24 years. "Mom!" Emma ran forward. Maggie caught her, held her tight, breathed in the familiar scent of her daughter's shampoo. "I've got you," Maggie whispered. "I've got you." "Mom, what's happening? Why would anyone threaten me? I don't understand any of this." Maggie pulled back, holding Emma's face in her hands. "Just this quiet woman who organized dinner parties and kept the house running." She shook her head. "And the whole time, you were this incredible person that nobody knew about." "I didn't want you to have to choose sides." "I'm not choosing sides, Mom." Emma's jaw set in a way that looked exactly like Maggie's. "I'm choosing you. I've always been choosing you. I just didn't know how much you needed me to." Maggie pulled her daughter close again. Behind them, Tom stepped off the jet. "We need to move," he said quietly. "My contacts intercepted some chatter. Trish isn't in Tuscany. She's here." "Here?" Maggie turned. "In London?" "Landed 3 hours ago on a private charter. She's meeting with someone. We don't know who yet." "Find out." "Working on it." Tom's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen and his expression hardened. "Maggie, you need to see this." He handed her the phone. It was a news alert. Breaking story from the New York Post. The headline read, "Whitmore divorce scandal deepens. Former wife accused of corporate espionage." Maggie's blood ran cold. She opened the article. It was full of accusations. Anonymous sources claiming she had stolen proprietary data. Allegations that she had manipulated the stock price. Quotes from unnamed board members questioning her qualifications. "This is Trish," Maggie said. "She's trying to destroy my reputation before I can consolidate control." "Can she?" "Not legally. Everything I did was clean." Maggie scrolled through the article. "But it doesn't matter if it's true. If she creates enough doubt, enough chaos, the board might panic. The stock could tank again. The whole thing could fall apart." Emma was reading over her shoulder. "Mom, this is insane. These are lies." "Of course they're lies, but lies travel faster than truth." Maggie handed the phone back to Tom. "We need to get ahead of this, now." "How?" "I need to make a statement. Something public. Something definitive." She thought fast. "The financial networks, CNBC, Bloomberg, they've been trying to get an interview since the party. Tell them I'll do it. Today. Live." "Maggie, you've been awake for 30 hours. "I know." She looked at him with steel in her eyes. "I'll sleep when Trish is finished." They were in a car heading toward central London when Grace called. "I found her." "Where?" "She's at the Dorchester, suite on the top floor. And Maggie, you're not going to believe who she's meeting with." "Who?" A pause. "Daniel." Maggie went still. "Daniel's in London?" "Flew in on a red-eye last night. He's been at the hotel for 6 hours." "What are they planning?" "I don't know yet, but my contact at the front desk says they've ordered room service for 3 people." "3?" "Third person arrived an hour ago. Male, late 60s, gray hair, expensive suit." Grace hesitated. "Description matches Harold Beckman." The name hit Maggie like a punch to the chest. Harold Beckman, the chairman of Beckman Capital Partners, one of the most powerful private equity firms on the East Coast, and the man who had been trying to acquire Whitmore Financial for the past decade. "They're selling," Maggie breathed. "What?" "Daniel and Trish. They're trying to sell their remaining shares to Beckman. If he gets enough of a stake, he could challenge my control." "Can he do that?" You have 53%. Voting shares. But if Beckman buys Daniel's B shares and converts them, if he makes a deal with the right board members, if he creates enough instability, Maggie's mind was racing. He could force a proxy fight, tie everything up in litigation for years. What do? We stop him. Maggie leaned forward to the driver. Change of plans. Take us to the Dorchester. Mom? Emma's voice was worried. What are you going to do? I'm going to end this, once and for all. The Dorchester was the kind of hotel where discretion was worth more than gold. The staff didn't blink when Maggie Crawford walked through the lobby in yesterday's clothes, flanked by her daughter and a billionaire. She'd called ahead. Tom's contacts had arranged for a keycard to the penthouse floor. Security clearances that shouldn't have been possible had been made possible with a few phone calls to the right people. The elevator rose in silence. Maggie straightened her jacket. She hadn't slept. She hadn't showered. She looked like a woman who had spent 2 days fighting for her life. Good. Let them see what she'd been through. Let them see that she was still standing. The doors opened. Maggie walked down the hallway to suite 1201. She didn't knock. She used the keycard and walked in. The sitting room of the suite was ornate and uncomfortable. 3 people were seated around a coffee table covered in documents. Daniel looked up first. His face went white. Trish rose from her chair, her hand flying to her chest. How did you— Sit down, Patricia. Maggie's voice was ice. You too, Harold. We're going to have a conversation. Harold Beckman didn't move. He was a big man, silver-haired and commanding, with the easy confidence of someone who had never lost a fight in his life. Miss Crawford, he said, his voice smooth, this is a private meeting. Not anymore. Maggie sat down in an empty chair, crossing her legs like she owned the room. Because she did. Let me guess. Daniel and Trish are offering you their shares at a discount. In exchange, you challenge my control, drag everything into court, and eventually force a buyout that leaves everyone rich and me humiliated. Beckman's smile didn't waver. Something like that. It won't work, won't it? He leaned back. You've got a majority stake, yes. But you also have a PR nightmare building. The espionage allegations, the questions about your qualifications, the instability in leadership. Investors are nervous. The board is nervous. One good push, and the whole thing could tip. One good push from you? I'm just an interested buyer. His smile widened. If the opportunity presents itself. Maggie turned to Daniel. Is this what you want? She asked. To sell everything your family built to a man who will strip it for parts and throw the carcass away? Daniel wouldn't meet her eyes. You left me no choice. I gave you a choice. $22 million and a fresh start. You could have walked away with dignity. What dignity? Daniel's voice cracked. You took everything from me. My company, my son, my reputation. What was I supposed to do? Just disappear? Yes. Maggie's voice was soft but merciless. That's exactly what you were supposed to do. Instead, you came here, to conspire with your mother, to threaten my daughter. Daniel's head snapped up. I didn't. Someone sent me a photo of Emma at the airport, with an implied threat. Maggie looked at Trish. That was you, wasn't it, Patricia? Trish's face was a mask of controlled rage. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me. Not now. Not after everything. Maggie stood up and walked toward her former mother-in-law. You hired someone to follow my daughter, to scare her, to scare me. Prove it. I don't need to prove it. Maggie's voice dropped to a whisper. I just need you to know that I know, and that I will never, ever forgive you for it. She turned back to Beckman. Here's what's going to happen, Harold. You're going to walk away from this deal. Right now. Tonight. Beckman laughed. And why would I do that? Because if you don't, I'm going to make your life very difficult. Maggie pulled out her phone. You see, while you were meeting with the Whitmores, my team was doing some research about your company, about your investors, about the offshore accounts you've been using to avoid SEC oversight. Beckman's smile froze. You think you're the only one with connections, Harold? You think you're the only one who knows how to dig? Maggie showed him the screen. This is a summary of every questionable transaction Beckman Capital has made in the past 5 years. Insider trading, market manipulation, tax evasion, all documented, all verified. That's confidential information. It was confidential. Now it's leverage. Maggie put the phone away. Walk away from the Whitmores. Walk away from Whitmore Financial. And this stays between us. And if I don't? Then every financial regulator in the country gets a copy tomorrow morning. Maggie's voice was flat. Along with every major news outlet. Your company will be under investigation within a week. Your investors will flee. Your reputation will be destroyed. Beckman's face had gone pale. He looked at Daniel, at Trish, then back at Maggie. You're bluffing. Try me. The silence stretched. Then Beckman stood up. This deal is off, he said to Daniel. I'm not risking my company for your family drama. Harold, wait, Trish started. We're done here. Beckman walked past Maggie without looking at her. At the door, he paused. You're ruthless, Miss Crawford. I respect that. But watch your back. People with nothing to lose are dangerous. He left. The suite was very quiet. Daniel slumped in his chair, his head in his hands. Trish was trembling with rage. You think you've won, she hissed. You think this is over. It is over. Maggie walked to the door. You have nothing left, Patricia. No money, no allies, no leverage. Daniel signed away his shares. The company is mine. And if you ever threaten my children again, I won't stop at destroying your reputation. I'll destroy everything you have left. She opened the door. Maggie, wait! It was Daniel's voice, small, broken. She turned. Why? He asked. Why did you stay? All those years, if you were so smart, so capable, why did you stay with me? Maggie looked at the man she had loved for 23 years. The man who had made her feel worthless. The man who had never bothered to see who she really was. Because I wanted to believe you could love me, she said. Because I thought if I was patient, if I was quiet, if I made myself small enough, you would eventually see my value. And I didn't. No, you didn't. She took a breath. But I see it now, and that's what matters. She walked out. In the hallway, Emma was waiting. Mom? Maggie took her daughter's hand. It's over, she said. Let's go home. 6 months later, Maggie stood at the window of her corner office on the 42nd floor of Crawford Tower. The name had changed 3 months ago. The board had voted unanimously. Whitmore Financial was dead. Crawford Global had risen in its place. The stock price had tripled since her takeover. The Tanaka deal had been resurrected, bigger and better than before. New clients were flooding in, drawn by the story of the quiet woman who had built an empire from the shadows. Her phone buzzed. A text from Grace. Interview starts in 10. You ready? Maggie smiled. The Wall Street Journal wanted a profile. The Financial Times was doing a cover story. Forbes had named her one of the most powerful women in business. She typed back, "Born ready." There was a knock at her door. "Come in." Ryan entered, tablet in hand. He'd been working as her executive assistant for the past 4 months, learning the business from the ground up, earning his place instead of inheriting it. "The London office reports are in," he said. "Profits up 20%. Emma's doing amazing work over there." Emma had taken over the European division 2 months ago. She turned out to have her mother's head for strategy and her father's charm, without any of his weaknesses. "Good." Maggie turned from the window. "What about the Ohio plant?" "Fully operational. No layoffs. The new pension plan kicks in next quarter," Ryan smiled. "The union rep sent you flowers, by the way. They're on your desk." Maggie looked at the bouquet. Simple wildflowers, nothing expensive. The card read, "Thank you for keeping your promise." She'd made a lot of promises over the past 6 months. To her employees, to her children, to herself. She'd kept every single one. "Anything else?" "One more thing." Ryan hesitated. "Dad called." Maggie went still. "What did he want?" "He's in rehab, someplace in Arizona. He wanted me to tell you he's getting help." "Good for him." "He also said," Ryan shifted uncomfortably, "he said he's sorry. For everything." Maggie was quiet for a long moment. "Do you believe him?" she asked. "I don't know." Ryan met her eyes. "Does it matter?" "No." Maggie picked up her jacket. "It doesn't." She'd spent 23 years waiting for Daniel Whitmore to see her value. She wasn't going to spend one more minute waiting for his apology. The elevator took her down to the lobby. A car was waiting to take her to the interview. Tom was leaning against it, arms crossed, a smile playing on his lips. "Big day," he said. "Every day's a big day now." "You love it." She did. That was the thing. She loved every exhausting, exhilarating minute of it. The decisions, the challenges, the weight of 2,000 lives depending on her judgment. She loved being seen. Tom opened the car door for her. "I have a question." "Ask it." "Dinner tonight. Just us. No business, no strategy, no hostile takeovers." He grinned. "What do you say?" Maggie pretended to consider it. "I say yes." She slid into the car. "But only if you're paying. CEOs don't go Dutch." Tom laughed and climbed in beside her. The car pulled away from Crawford Tower, into the flow of Manhattan traffic. In the back seat, Maggie reached over and took Tom's hand. She thought about the woman she'd been 6 months ago, standing in the rain outside Whitmore Tower, signing away 23 years of her life, walking away with nothing but a carry-on bag and a father's pen. She thought about the woman she was now, CEO of a global company, mother of 2 incredible children, partner to a man who had waited 30 years for her to see her own worth. She thought about all the women who had ever been told they were nobody, who had been dismissed, overlooked, underestimated, who had made themselves small so someone else could feel big. This story was for them. The car stopped at a red light. Maggie looked out the window at the city stretching in every direction, full of possibility, full of promise. She smiled. Margaret Ellen Crawford had signed the divorce quietly, but she had returned with the thunder of a private jet, the precision of a hostile takeover, and the unstoppable force of a woman who finally knew exactly what she was worth. They had called her nobody. They had called her lucky. They had called her a farm girl from Iowa who should have been grateful for every crumb. They were wrong. She was a queen who had been playing chess while they were playing checkers. And the game was finally over.